And I wanted to close it with saying most Jewish languages are endangered, and what can we do in our communities to help promote the use of Jewish languages? And in our communities, I mean the humanistic Jewish community. And I'll leave it at that. Stop the share, and that's my side finished.
Go ahead,
Hi
Zed.
there. Yeah. There's a group, I don't know if you're familiar with it, that are trying to promote the use of Yiddish called Yid Life Crisis.
Yes.
And we actually hosted them a couple of years ago. And I mean, they're like a comedy duo, but they do a lot of really, their videos are a riot. And if you want to have sort of some modern Yiddish fun, I suggest people go watch them on YouTube. They're really good.
Yeah. Are they from the UK? Yid Life Crisis?
No, Toronto.
Toronto.
Oh, Montreal. Sorry, they're from Montreal.
Oh, I thought they were from Toronto.
No.
Yeah, they made
Montreal.
a video in London. They made a video in London.
Mm.
Yeah.
Martin, has anyone, sort of put all this information into book form, or are you going to, so that all this information, which is fascinating, is preserved and all this research?
Yeah, so there are books on Jewish languages. I'm not really, I'm not going to do that because I have too many other things that I'm writing and trying to do. But yeah, there definitely are lots of books on Jewish languages. So if I share again,
yes, can you provide a reading list?
yeah, so this here is one. Jewish languages and book culture. Yeah, that's a very good one. I can't provide the reading list now, but that is something that I will be able to send.
So of all these languages and things that you've shared with us today are preserved somewhere in some book or another, hopefully.
Well, all of the languages that I showed today are still spoken in some form or another. And also they are in books, yeah. And I didn't mention actually that Ladino is undergoing a major revival. Yiddish is having a revival. Hakatia is undergoing a revival. It's now taught at the University of Haifa. It's also taught at the the Oxford School of Jewish Languages. A colleague of mine, Dr. Carlos Yebra Lopez, has a YouTube channel called Ladino 101. There's Encontros del Had, which is a weekly Sunday Zoom meetup, which is by the Centro Sefaradi, which is from Argentina, and everything's in Ladino and Hakatia. And of course, Wikitongues, which I also work for Wikitongues. Wikitongues has major Jewish languages. And there's the Endangered Language Alliance in New York. And if you want to help with Jewish languages in Toronto, you could get in touch with the Endangered Language Alliance Toronto. It's a woman working all by herself with virtually no funding, recording people and making materials.
Can you tell me what the difference is between, I hope this isn't a silly question, Arabic and Aramaic?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, they're just two different Semitic languages.
Two different
Semitic languages.
Okay.
So Aramaic is a North Semitic language like Hebrew, and Arabic is a Southern Semitic language.
Okay.
Is Aramaic, is that spoken by the Ethiopian Jews?
No, Ethiopian Jews. Well, Ethiopian Jews speak several languages, including Oromo, Amhara, and Tigrinya. They're not a homogeneous community. So, but Amharic is also a Semitic language. Yeah.
I just want to say that I learned a lot. I thought I knew quite a bit about Jewish languages, but you mentioned a few that I had never heard of before. And it's very interesting. I would love to learn more if you're willing to teach us some more. I don't mean
I
today,
would.
another
Yeah.
time. And this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Martin,
Thank
are
you.
you familiar with a book called De Ruyter Pomeranzen?
No.
It's quite interesting because it's written using the Roman alphabet, but it's Yiddish, and it's
Mm.
all Jewish jokes and funny stories.
Oh,
So
right,
a
yeah.
So a non-Yiddish speaker or reader, I suppose, more accurately, can still read the jokes and the stories and even read them out loud if there's a bit of an inflection that they can bring to bear.
Uh-huh.
And it's Yiddish. You're speaking Yiddish, except you don't know any Yiddish.
Transliteration is very useful for both Hebrew and Yiddish.
Just wondering, you presented Yinglish as
Uh-huh.
a separate language.
Yeah.
It's not really a separate language that is spoken. Maybe our inflections and the way it's delivered are specific to the Jews, but most of those words have been absorbed into English by non-Jewish people, commonly use many of those words. So I'm just curious, out of the other languages that you presented, are any of those also sort of a cultural embrace of Jewish words that are also spoken by non-Jews, or how many of them are they all the others actually separate languages?
Okay. First, I'm going to address the first part of your statement, which was Jewish English is not really a separate language. So, is this English?
Kind of.
Well, no.
Parts of it.
It's a mix. It's a mix
Yeah.
of
Code
different
switching.
languages.
It's not code switching. It's no, it's just an example of Jewish English. So
Yes, but I wouldn't understand it if somebody said that to me. I don't know what much of that means.
Yeah, but
No,
that's
no.
because the lexis, the lexicon, the words are different, but the grammar is very similar. The structure is English.
yeah, to a certain extent. Yeah. There are lots of differences in it, actually. And the difference between a language and a dialect is normally intelligibility. So if somebody says something in something that you don't consider to be another language, if you can't understand it, then it's not a dialect of the same language that you speak. It's just a matter of standardization, really. We tend to consider things to be separate languages because they've been standardized. But linguistic criteria is a lot more than that, and it's actually a lot more to do with intelligibility. So, for example, Scots spoken in Scotland and the north of Ireland is not English, even though half of it might be intelligible to an English speaker. So the same applies to Jewish English. And where code switching was mentioned, you may code switch between a lower variety or a sort of Jewish English inflected form of non-Jewish English, whereas this speaker would be speaking a different form, a different variety of Jewish English. Like all languages have varieties. Jewish English is no different from that. And the same is applied to African American English, which is also a separate language. And so the second part of your question was, are there
Of the other languages you presented, are the others kind of standalone languages that are actually spoken, or are they also a mix that's sort of like a variation on another existing language as opposed to a whole separate language?
So they're all separate languages. Yeah. So for example, why is Judeo-Arabic a different language from Muslim or Christian Arabic? Lexicon, morphology, some grammatical, lots of different features, but also the orthography, the writing. Judeo-Arabic is written in the Hebrew alphabet. even if it's in an endangered language now, or a group of endangered languages, it still has a separate orthography, which has over 1,000 years of history, if not more. And the difference between Urdu and Hindi is also lexicon, religion, and alphabet. They're mutually intelligible, but they're separate languages. Same for Croatian and Serbian, and Portuguese and Galician, and etc. So yeah, basically.
Martin, can I ask
yeah.
a question?
Yeah.
Asking you to put on not your hat as a linguist, but your kippah as a Jewish community leader. Judaism puts a lot of emphasis on educating children, right? Vishinantam levanecha, however, l'dor vador, however you want to put that value. Do you think educating children not in the existence of multiple Jewish languages, but in some language other than I'll say their local language, is an important goal, just to sort of contextualize it. If you grow up in Toronto in the Orthodox community, you're going to learn a second language other than English, right? You're going to know Hebrew, at least, probably. You might know Yeshivish or something to throw in. And the more you go away from there, if you go into the conservative world, less so, the reform world, less so, but a little bit more in the humanist world, you know, I would say very little emphasis is put on teaching a Jewish language at all. Do you think it's important to teach a Jewish language like Hebrew or not to the next generation of Jews?
I do think it's important to teach a Jewish language. Yeah, absolutely. And I currently have a bar mitzvah student who his family on his mother's side, he's Brazilian, and his mother's family are originally of Moroccan and Portuguese ancestry. And he's chosen to do his parashah in Ladino because it's difficult to find it in Hakatia, but he wanted to at least to be Judeo-Spanish for him. So that's like his Jewish language. And I do think like using Yiddish, using Ladino, using Arabic, knowing these things as a community is really important. And I would like to see there being more options in the humanistic Jewish community for, okay, do you want to learn Yiddish, Hebrew, Ladino, Arabic, whatever? You know? I just think I do think it's very important for Jewish identity. Yeah. Did I answer?
Yeah, well, I'll ask a follow-up. And why do you think it's important?
Because losing a language means losing a big part of your identity. And languages are usually lost because of the dominance of another language, of a majority language. And we're a minority community, and we have like heritage languages, and we've lost them to a large extent, especially in the English-speaking world and in Israel. And so focusing on Hebrew all the time as a community, we also contribute to the loss of other Jewish languages. And I think that we should be addressing it as a humanist community. I think it's a humanist value to promote the use of heritage languages. Yeah. I see Jane put your hand up, and then Penny, and then Rabbi Eva.
Yeah, I was taking a Yiddish class. This is Thea. I was taking a couple of Yiddish classes this past year through the Committee for Yiddish. They're based in Toronto, but they have like Zoom Yiddish classes, weekly classes for different levels.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So you want to recommend them?
So sure, yeah, I'll recommend them.
Great. Yeah.
Much more affordable than the Yiddish Book Center, which I think is based out of New York.
Right. Penny?
Yeah, so thank you very much. I'm completely fascinated. I have a little bit of a background in linguistics myself, but this was really blew me away. How do you feel about us, assuming we can get access to the video, sharing it with other people who I think might have similar interests?
Yeah, I have no problem sharing it. I have another version that I gave a similar talk at Spinoza Favara a while ago, and there is a video online, but I can also upload this one. I don't know how that's going to work, which YouTube channel to put it on, but for sure I will send the link to Rabbi Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I love Jonathan's question, but it gets expanded one bit further, and that's not only educating children, but educating adults, because if we're going to be, we're very small, and if we're going to be a community, we need to understand each other. And if we can't understand what the Orthodox or the Reform community is doing or saying, and if we don't know what the Mizrahi communities are doing or saying, how can we commune with them? So I think teaching these languages is a very important element, not only the languages, but the heritage culture, the cultural, what do Orthodox Jews do? What do Reform Jews do? What do Mizrahi Jews do? What do some of these other Jews do that I haven't even known the names of, in terms of what are their traditions? Let's learn and share about all of these traditions and become more familiar. Let's share some of the common foods that may not be common to us, but are common to them. It makes us feel closer to them. And instead of rejecting them or thinking of them as other, we think of them as one of us. So I think that's a very important point in our movement.
I totally agree. Yeah. Thank you.
I love this, and I'm also very interested in all the different communities, and maybe they have different, like just not traditions or stuff. Are there different like concepts or values that are like slightly different between different groups?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, completely. The person doing his bar mitzvah, who's 19 years old, by the way, he's calling his bar mitzvah cumplimiento de minyan, because in the Sephardi community, the one that speaks Judeo-Spanish, it's the cumplimiento. Cumplir minyan is how you say he's going to do his bar mitzvah. The word bar mitzvah was actually the Ashkenazi tradition. And then he said, well, I like bar mitzvah, but I'm going to take on the responsibility as of the minyan, of the community, of the, for him, that was a very important concept. Like he learned through studying for it. And so this idea of cumplir minyan for him, it was exactly what you just said. That's just one example. And he's doing that through our community. So yes, I mean, but there's so many examples. Yeah. I see Aaron raise his hand.
Hi, this is Aaron from Dallas, Texas, from the Spinoza Havara. And this was very interesting. So I guess my question is trying not to, I have my idea or an assumption, but I just want to check. How do I describe the value and the goal of appreciating the various minority cultures? Generally speaking, like, how do I express that? Because generally, the general goal, in my view, is to enhance that it makes it can be used to increase unity and appreciation, not by not erasing or whitewashing, in quotes. So, but I don't know how, I don't know if that is just my assumption or my expression. And I bring this up, I know this is a lot of issues, but I've heard somebody say, so humanistic Judaism, if you don't believe in the traditional theology, you're just a racist group. And I have, which of course I reacted, but
cultural, not racist.
Yes. So
decolonization is the value, I believe. It's decolonization, you know, not allowing one Jewish group to dominate, you know, combating Ashkenazi, combating lots of things, patriarchy, you know, promoting equality, all of that. Yeah. Because languages are patriarchal too, by the way, even though they are known. Nobody ever says my father tongue. It's always the mother tongue. You first learn your language from your mother if you are like most people have a mother, you know. And yet men have always controlled language and what is classed as a language, and all of our assumptions and ideologies about what languages are come from patriarchy. And so combating that is decolonizing our minds as a community, and that is a humanistic value, in my opinion.
Yet Yiddish, I think, is known as the Mama Lashon, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Paula.
Yeah. Just two things. One, Yiddish Book Center's in Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts, if anybody cares. But also at the Spinoza Havara, Martin especially, who comes from a more of a Sephardi background, we do celebrations of Mamuna and Sigud, which is Ethiopian, I think. We bring in a lot of different cultural celebrations throughout the year at Spinoza Havara, which is wonderful.
It's great fun.
Great fun, yeah.
Yeah, and I do things like teach people different ways of doing things. So, for example, when people want to light the candles, people ask, "How do I light the candles on Friday night?" And I will say, "Well, you can do whatever you want to say. Let's call it the bracha before you light the candles, or you can say it after you light the candles." And that's just one small example, because Sephardim light it before, whereas Ashkenazim light it after. Little things like that. Say it after lighting. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. And also Mimuna, which, you know, I would love to see I would like to see the Society for Humanistic Judaism listing Mimuna as a Jewish festival, Sigid as a Jewish festival, and when is it, and what's the date, and, you know, all of these kinds of things. So yeah, for sure. And we use Ladino in our services. Yeah.
It might be important to let the AHR or the Institute know that it would be useful for the leaders in our movement to have a list of all of the different Jewish festivals and celebrations of the different types of Jewishness that there are, and the information about each of them, so that if they have people in their community who need to celebrate it or want to celebrate it, that way that they can do it, but even if they don't, so that they can teach their communities about the different ways there are to be Jewish.
Indeed. I don't know how long. Sorry, Luis.
If there aren't more questions, let me just ask Martin, did you have any closing thoughts you wanted to share?
Not really, because yeah, no, I think that the discussion addressed my closing thoughts really well, and I just think it would be good if Irene would like to continue the conversation and continue thinking about ways to include Jewish languages and honoring them and valuing them, and not just Hebrew and English.
So let me just, a small thing, Martin, I'm going to be away for a couple of weeks. If you have anything to send that you want to share to the group, could you please send it to Robbie so she can distribute it?
Yeah, no problem.
And let me just say, if you appreciated what Martin's teaching, I'll do it this way. So thank you, Martin, for such an enriching session for all of us. So we really appreciate it. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And I'll say, hopefully it won't be too long to those of you in the Spinoza Chavara, that it won't be too long till we see you again. So,
And maybe we can all get together at Sandy's and join together in singing different Jewish songs in different languages. Just let Sandy know what those might be.
Yeah, no pressure on Sandy to learn.
No pressure.